There's, I think, several questions. Some I'm not sure if I can answer, but I'll try. First, about the mistake. I think clearly I would address that it was a mistake to leave Afghanistan to go to Iraq, because if we had gotten Afghanistan right, we would not be in this mess that we are in now. Now that we have this second window of opportunity, I think we have to have both. Before you came, I mentioned that we have to have two tracks, a political and military. We have to have the military track because we face an insurgency that is extremely lethal, that is quite capable in certain areas, and at this stage we have not been able to find answers for it, especially in terms of dealing with it. And we need obviously the civilians, but the civilians at what cost and at what price? If they're going to come and do everything for the Afghans, then we don't need these civilians. You know, it was Lawrence of Arabia who said that, you know, rather than the outsiders doing it perfectly, let the locals do it imperfectly. And we need to do that. And I think we've already spent way too much money on this technical assistance that I think Claire can talk about this. I think over $1 billion on a lot of this technical assistance, and individuals who come and make $1,000 a day. So we have to have both. We have to have both. And lastly, why can't we find Osama? I really wish I knew where he was, but I really don't know. I think, you know, I've been trying to follow. I've listened to every one of his sermons and his audio tapes and videotapes, and his you know, whereabouts have gone cold. But I know he's in that region, and I think if we had resources, you know, that was the ironic thing. 2003, we were really winning. We were so ahead of everything. And all of a sudden, a lot of the special forces, a lot of the intelligence, everything, we just took everybody out and went, so they were training for Iraq. I mean, a lot of the people that spoke Arabic were sent to Iraq, and we had special forces that spoke Latin American, you know, Spanish. You know, I'm not sure how many Afghans speak Spanish, but none that I know of. I mean, there might be some here. But overall, I think Afghans and the international community want a partnership, and I think Afghans are ready for it, and I think we can do it. I think it is possible to win in Afghanistan. It's just, I think we really need to change our approach. Thank you. Thank you.
I think absolutely, and part of, I believe, what has started, and the President's new strategy is part of that process of really questioning where the mistakes have been made in order to put things back on a different track and a different course. One of them, as Hekmat has mentioned, was the diversion of attention, focus, resources and people to Iraq. That was a decision that's now in the past, and nothing can be done about it. I think other mistakes that have been made, I referred to in my earlier comments. One is of the way that US assistance and assistance from other countries around the world have been deployed has been catastrophic. And I know that the CIGAR will be looking into exactly how the monies have been deployed to come up with recommendations for changes going forward. I think a third mistake, and is being widely recognized now, is on choice of partners. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons in my understanding why the population, if not supporting the Taliban and insurgents, are willing not to resist them, is because of a pact with certain strongmen and individuals that were made at the time when the privileging of a counter-terrorism effort over a state-building or nation-building effort was made. And decisions to require the Afghan government and the institutions of state to accommodate people who, quite frankly, would find it, by their own admission, these people are saying why, and Sarah Chase has actually documentation of this, by their own admission saying, why are you including me? I'm a commander, I'm used to commanding forces, I'm not somebody who should be a governor, I'm not somebody who should be leading a ministry. Back in 2002, many of these people, all they wanted, especially Independent Commission of the Lawyer Jager, went around the country, talked to many of these so-called warlords or strongmen, He said, what do you want? And they said, all we want to do is to go back to our villages and be left in peace. We're terrified that we're going to be taken to The Hague. Instead, what was made were decisions to build them up, let them run militias, monopolise the border posts of the country, collect customs. They've got engaged in narcotics production, so on. Now they're much stronger animals than they were. But some question, and the key demand of much of the Afghan population, is for some kind of justice, some kind of, whether it's a reconciliation process or some kind of accountability for past actions, is desirable in their view. But at a minimum, a situation where impunity doesn't continue for breach of laws, which is why a rule of law focus, a law enforcement focus is so essential going forward. But I think there's some key decisions now that these people have accumulated power, find it very hard to adapt to notions of governance. And not notions of governance that are Western or seen as a Western position. These are notions of governance that are also inherent to Afghan culture and their interpretation of what Islamic culture is. And finally, on the question of, and I think this question of law enforcement and rule of law is also key, as you mentioned, to the question of much, if not all, of methods of dealing with counterterrorism, using legal process as a means of putting people on trial, bringing them to justice, might be one of the key tools that hitherto haven't been used.
Thank you also very much. And I am going to follow what you said earlier and have continued this discussion because I think it's incredibly important. Especially in view of the election of last November. The idea was getting out of the wars. And there is an undercurrent feeling going on now that we're going to be here for longer than was initially suggested, and that means we don't know, we got another question mark on the date. We advertised we won the war in Iraq and that it was over, and of course nobody really believed that then, but it's strangely, it's a very suspicious, uneasy feeling among a number of people that this is the beginning of an open-ended situation. That no matter how well tailored it is, no matter how carefully thought out it is, no matter how many contingencies are allowed for, we're getting into another hole. That I think is a new concern that is different from the one held by many that voted on November 4th. Namely, is that there was goodbye. Sorry, we're going to close it down somehow. We didn't have all the answers, but I think that it's beginning. The feeling is that, wait a minute, we may not be closing this down. And it's that kind of viewpoint that moves me to work with you on these next months ahead and the very important decisions that have to be made.